Hello, this is my seminar, a brief seminar on defeating the inferior and the mechanisms of control regarding the inferior ID. So, the inferior ID is a dormant part of our self, not regarding shell therapy, mechanisms of EKG therapy and electrochemical stimulus induction. That is the MOSFET mechanisms of the inferior self. And this is how to defeat that in the masculine form for men. And so it basically goes as indications show challenging the ID through the inferior ID, the inferior supracortex, and ID itself. To retort and reinforce that behavior is to attack the senses, continually attack the sensory organs, which is, that little guy right there in the cerebellum. That which is your reality. Well, what do we call that organ? I don't know. But that organ is your sensory organ located in the cerebellum. And basically, what that means is what you expose yourself to is the reinforcement you get. And so, for the pro, that is reinforcement of intuition, attainment, and observation. The mechanism of this is to challenge the idea itself. This is called mirroring, something along the lines of an agreed upon bias, non-disformed bias, which would be a bunch of people agreeing on the same idea that you don't agree on, and them all attacking you. They're all mirroring the same mechanism. The challenge is your ID self and the mirror being that which challenges the ID in these three components. That is the sensory organs, the nature of memory, and the supracortex, and the endocrine system, the way your body feels. This quadrant is designed as quadrant 2, attacking the inferior ID. Your quadrant means your sense of awareness as to your exterior. The department of the exterior is what you expose yourself to. And the reinforcement of behavior based on not performance, as performance indicates dissatisfied, as in shared and coupling. This is based on the superior. Based on superior. Let that be an indicator. So if you're being challenged by the mechanism of the inferior self, that indicates that somewhere in your life right now is a superior motive that has been undefined that makes a lot of people feel inferior. The superior motive. The superior motive is important. That's why we journal. That's why we record what we're working on. Challenging the superior motive is the quadrant 2 inferior. Identifying the factors of quadrant 2 is the relationships you keep, your wife, your kids, your job, your friends, your church, places of the exterior that have shared beliefs. In this, if that does happen within itself, there is a reasonable way to deal with this, and that is to generate, here it comes, the sociopathic behavior. To generate the sociopathic behavior, the agreed upon thought process within the region itself, the agreed upon thought within defined region is value X. So you need to find value Y. That is to challenge the mechanisms of quadrant 2, which is the Department of Inferior. Quadrant being the space around you, defined space. Defined space. The challenge to define space and generate the sociopathic behavior of challenging the exterior. That is how you defeat what we call MOSFET mechanisms of the inferior self. Now, when you learn about this even further, quadrant 2, which is value here, so let's break this down into one more. This is quadrant 2, which is simply triangle and your base area of insemination, the insertion point. This is your insertion point. That's your insertion point. So challenging it is quadrant 3, in which quadrant 3 takes shape. Shape being that it challenges the 3D of your world. If the 3D is challenged of your world, that is definitely a 95% chance that you have superior motive somewhere in your life. And so challenging it with the, again, sociopathic behavior of the exterior is your best bet. Now, here's the rule as a man that I'm not going to put on this chart, as you should be aware that when you drink too much and get sick, you stop drinking so much. Challenging the mechanisms of the sociopathic behavior as quadrant 2 generates to quadrant 3 is not as simple as it sounds if you're not willing to cut off the behavior completely. If you don't cut it off, it's like cancer and it will grow. It will fester and you will catch a charge or do something erratic. And so challenging the mechanism of the Department of the Inferior with sociopathic behavior is best advised. Although it has been proven that it won't happen all the time based on the nature of the individual itself and what his needs or her needs are, it is recommended to get out there on your own and find your own way when met with the challenge of the inferior. Don't give it any time of day.